I was trained in reproductive biology, but I'm interested in the female, and specifically the ovary. And even more specifically, I'm interested in ovulation, the mechanism of ovulation. So when I came here all those years ago, my research objective was to define the cellular and molecular pathways that culminate in ovulation. Ovulation, of course, is a very important event in the regulation of fertility. Without ovulation, there can't be a pregnancy. We knew that ovulation was a hormone-induced event. So there's hormones that are produced by the brain that are responsible for triggering the ovulatory process, but we didn't have a very good understanding of what happened once a hormone binds to its receptor on ovarian cells, and then what are the consequences that occur that result in actual rupture of the follicle itself. And it turns out that there's a cascade of enzymes that are produced that weaken the ovarian wall. We actually think that this closely resembles an inflammatory reaction, and that this is actually a kind of a wounding process that occurs. So ovulation is extraordinary in that the female actually attacks her own tissue and causes that tissue to be weakened, so that when the follicle will actually undergo some contractions and will actually rupture and then deliver the egg to the surface of the ovary. So that follicle is transformed into now a structure called a corpus luteum that produces progesterone, and if fertilization occurs, then progesterone supports the early pregnancy in mammals. So then eventually that corpus luteum will regress, either at the end of a non-pregnant cycle or at the end of pregnancy, and then that area is actually repaired. So there is a wound healing process that occurs subsequent to ovulation. So the implications of the research, early on, my interest was in fertility, that if we could control ovulation, of course we could control fertility. But there was kind of an unexpected twist to this story, and it all goes back to this inflammation and wound healing process that occurs. And it turns out that ovarian cancer, which is an area that I've been working in probably over the last 10 or 15 years pretty intensely, it turns out that ovarian cancer is an ovulation-related disease. And I really never anticipated that I would become involved in cancer research, but ovulation took me there. So these molecules that are generated during ovulation, these inflammatory mediators, and there's another group of molecules called reactive oxygen molecules that actually damage the DNA of cells that surround the ovulatory site. So the question that was out there was, what is it about ovulation that is predisposing women to cancer? That if there are damages to DNA, that if they weren't repaired, if those cells, for example, had these mishaps or malfunctions in their DNA system, they could possibly transform into a cancer cell. So we were the ones that really were the first ones to show that there are damages to DNA of these cells that potentially could be at the root of ovarian cancer. And ovarian cancer is a very deadly, insidious disease because it typically remains silent, asymptomatic, until it has reached far beyond the ovaries. We found that in the vast majority of cases, these DNA damages that occur, these are repaired. And we found that this hormone progesterone, by the way, played an active role in this wound repair process. So as the follicle went from this estrogen-producing follicle that led to ovulation to this progesterone-producing gland that supports pregnancy, we found that progesterone would turn on these DNA repair mechanisms, and they would actually inhibit cells from producing enzymes that are necessary for them to move and become invasive and then to form a colony and clonally expand. So the implications of the ovarian cancer side of it are that, first of all, we know that antioxidants can prevent some of these DNA damages that occur. And I think the one that may be more applicable is the role of progesterone. by stimulating DNA repair systems in these cells and by inhibiting these cells from becoming aggressive as the cancer spreads from the ovaries into the abdominal cavity, that the progesterone in particular may be a very important hormone in terms of potential treatments. It's exciting and it's rewarding. I've always said researchers are gluttons for punishment because many times we do experiments and so forth that don't come to a positive outcome. You know, so when you find something that has not only has value to our basic understanding of how we reproduce and perhaps how we develop certain diseases, but from a practical standpoint, that perhaps some of this information will be used, if not by us at the University of Wyoming, but perhaps somebody that is in a clinical situation that can take this information and use it, you know, and again, perhaps translate it into something that might actually save a life. So yes, of course, that's very exciting, you know, to be at least even a small part of that process.